Hi, Caden. I hope that you are doing well. Happy New Year to you. I haven't seen you since last year. I hope that you had a really good winter break and that if you had any New Year's festivities, that went well too. All right, so last time we met, we were discussing how important articulation is, right? Remember, music is a language. It's very important for people to very clearly understand what we are trying to convey and what we're trying to communicate. So, the start of our note, very important. The end of our note, very important, right? It has to be very clear, very clear. But today, I want to talk a little bit about a different concept. So, there's these things we have in music that we call a scale. You may or may not have heard someone or of something sounding like this: Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Do, ti, la, so, fa, mi, re, do. So that thing is one of many of our scales. A scale is sort of like a fundamental building block of music. Um, I could confidently say about 99.9% of music you've ever heard is based on these scales. I'm fairly confident in that. Even if it seems like it isn't, it most likely is. So these things are pretty important to know about. Our scales sort of work in a. I like to illustrate a story whenever I talk about them. So our starting place, the note that we start on in our scale, is sort of like what we call our home note. It sounds like where we start and where we're headed to as well. In a typical day, right, you wake up and where do you start? You're at home, right? You might venture out of your home to maybe go to the store or go see some friends or go across town. Maybe you're like going on a trip and you're going way out of town. But eventually, at some point, you got to come back home, right? It's the same way that the scale works. I'm going to demonstrate one for you and you'll hear it. I'm going to start on a note, and that note is going to be at the end as well. So watch this. As you heard, I started da, and whenever I got to the top of my scale, we can kind of think of them as like a ladder or steps as well. Da 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 da. That top spot that I was at sounded the same as the bottom spot. Da 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 da. And then I came back down. Ba da ba 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 ba. They have a very predictable nature to them. But again, they are a very essential part of what we're doing. So, how do we make these major scales anyway? What's up with that? Well, there are really only two rules that we need. And as long as you're following both of those rules, then you'll get a major scale every single time. So, our first rule has to do with our letters. Now, remember, we only have 7 letters in our musical alphabet, right? And also recall earlier, I was saying that the note I started on was also the note that was at the end of the scale, right? So that rule directly plays into that. Your starting and ending note will be the same letter. So you can use that one twice. But for every other note in the scale, you have to use them at least one time, right? So you'll go through 7 letters, and then your eighth letter will be a repeat of your first letter. So if we started on the letter C, for example, C, D, E, F, G, A, B. So now I've used up all of my unique letters, but we have to end on the note we started on. So C, and that gives us 8 letters in our scale. This scale is called a major scale because it sounds happy, right? But our second rule, arguably a more important rule, they're equally important. But our second rule has to do with our relationship between whole steps and half steps. Remember this pattern. I'm going to split it in half. Whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, half step. Whole step, whole step, whole step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. Okay? Practice doing both of those halves. Whole step, half step, whole step, half step. Knowing that pattern is going to be very important. And then there's one final piece of this puzzle that sort of makes it all make a little bit more sense. Whenever you are sitting, it is impossible to go directly from sitting to walking. There's something you have to do first. You have to stand. So, it's the same thing with our scale here. The first note that you start on does not count as a whole step or a half step. It's just us standing up so that we can go up the steps or down the steps or up the ladder or down the ladder or just standing so that we can walk in the first place, right? So, as a review, 2 rules for major scale. Your starting and ending letter are the same, but aside from that, you must use every letter one time. And it's our whole step and half step pattern. Whole step, half step, whole step, half step. As long as you have those 2 rules, you get a major scale without fail. So this week, I want you to practice constructing your C major scale. You'll start on the letter C, and then you'll apply both of those rules, the 2 rules that we've been talking about. All right, buddy. I hope that you have a great week, and I'll see you next time.